That is a hit at a mile. Alright guys, welcome back to 243 Outdoors. My name is Josh. We have a new gun on the channel, the Thompson Center Compass, chambered in .308. So, as you guys know, I'm a fan of budget rifles. We have the Ruger American in 6.5 Creedmoor. We have the Savage Axis in .223. And I thought I needed a Thompson Center Compass in .308. So I actually caught on to this from Ocean. If you haven't checked out Ocean's channel, please do. I'll leave a link in the description. Ocean picked up this exact same rifle. He opted for the one that came with the Vortex scope. I wasn't really interested in that scope, so I just got the base rifle. This comes from Kentucky Gun Company. They're having a killer deal on these. All calibers are available, so might check that out. If you're wanting a good cheap rifle, that's the place to do it. Also did a little Black Friday shopping, picking up the SWFA Super Sniper SS 20x42 scope. This is a fixed power 20 power scope. What really leads me to liking this rifle is the massive amount of adjustment it has. I believe it's 110 minutes. These scopes are very affordable at $299 regular price. The Black Friday deal was $259, and it came with all kinds of extras. Came with free rings, had a free sunshade, we got a free bubble level. It also came with this mag loader. So this is for like your double stack pistol magazines, Glock magazines. You know, the Magula. This is the Butler Creek version. It works very well. Been playing around with it. Kind of cool. So they valued all this stuff at like $130 in extras, and then the scope was $40 off. Ordered that on like Black Friday. Actually, it was like Thursday night, just right before midnight, right before Black Friday started. They already had them up, and I received this on Monday, so it was pretty quick. The scope comes with factory bases, which I'm never really a fan of. They're okay, but I usually prefer to use a 20 MOA base from Evolution Gunworks, so we got one of those. I had to order that directly from their site. These rifles, since they're on sale, have been very popular. And a lot of people are buying these bases. Everywhere I was buying stuff from was out of stock, so I just bought it off their website. And one thing I forgot to mention, this rifle also has a $50 rebate. So this rifle's coming in at just a pinch over $200. So if you're wanting a rifle from basically 204 all the way up to 300 Win Mag, about every caliber's in there. So also got a single shot loading block from our friends over at Ragged Hole. I run one of these in the Ruger American, and this just basically replaces the factory magazine, allows you to single feed. I'm a huge fan of these. I reached out to them and they sent me one. I'll leave a link, a little card up here in the corner, and I did a video a while back on those, so you can check that out and also check them out. Right now I plan on keeping this rifle fairly stock. We're going to start by shooting some super cheap bullets. These are the Spear 168 grain 30 caliber bullets. 100 bullets for $22.99. You don't get much cheaper than that. I'm pretty much a fan of 168 grain for .308. I don't have a lot of experience in .308, but that's what I've shot, and I generally use Varget. So I think that's what we'll use. We're going to try to keep this rifle fairly stock. I did do a little trigger job to it, and a lot of people's asked me if I'd share that. I'm not going to share what I did because every rifle is going to be a little bit different, and just the slightest little variation can make an unsafe rifle. I've got this trigger, I'm going to estimate it at about 4.5 pounds from the factory, and I've got it probably right around 3 pounds. It's not a bad trigger. I have actually dropped it from about 2 feet many times, and it has not tripped it. There's a little adjustment on that. If I go a little bit more, it trips it very easy. So there's a very fine line on that trigger. There's a company that sells an aftermarket spring kit for $20. That might be something you're interested in. I watched their video, kind of understand how the mechanics of the trigger work, and just basically did my own trigger job. Didn't have to cut no springs or anything. I used factory parts. I actually added 2 washers, and that's all I did. But We're going to leave the stock alone right now. The stock feels a lot better than the Ruger and the Axis. The Ruger and the Axis stocks are very similar. There's a lot more meat in the front end of the stock, so it is free floated. The barrel channel may not be quite aligned perfectly, but it is free floated. There's a little bit more gap on one side than the other. I actually took a little sandpaper and took that rough edge off the inside just to clean it up a little bit. It comes with this little, I guess it's like an advertisement piece. And if you watched Johnny's Reloading Bench's recent video on his 6.5 compass, he uses this when he mounts the stock, and you can actually slide it up in there and it acts as a spacer. So when I'm not shooting this rifle, I'm going to leave it stored with this slit up under it, and that way it'll be evenly spaced, and that's a pretty good idea. I'll take it off when I shoot it. That's really about it. A lot of people requested they want to see me put this rifle together, so I think we'll do that tonight. So we'll get this over mounted in the vise, leveled up, and we'll get our scope mounted. I'll go through all the steps that I do and show you how to do it. The only thing I don't have is any brass, but I believe Starline will be shipping me some brass here shortly. I got a shipment of 6.5 brass from them in a couple days ago, or I guess it was yesterday, so I assume I should have some 308 coming real soon. So I think we're going to have a heck of a shooter here. Johnny's Reloading Bench has excellent luck with his compass in 6.5. So I wanted a different caliber than his. I already have a 6.5. I didn't want another. 308 was my next choice. There's such a large variety of bullets for the 308, and I was tempted to buy a second rifle. I'm really wanting a 22-250. So I think I'll wait a little bit, maybe even next year. But that's probably one of the next calibers on my list to get is a 22-250. So let's see if we can put all this stuff together and get us a rifle that's ready to go. Alright, so tonight's Uncle Jim's hat chat also, so I'm going to have them kind of playing in the background. Sorry I'm not on there. I'm kind of watching the chat. I may hop on the chat here in a little bit, but we got a video to film tonight. Alright, first thing we're going to do tonight is get rid of these factory bases. I've actually already had these off and kind of degreased them ahead of time. One thing about these rifles, if you do pick one up, make sure you take these off, clean them up, Loctite them down, and torque them down. Out of the 4 screws, the front one was tight, and the back one was pretty much just finger tight on both of these. So if you just mount a scope right on that, you would probably have trouble. So we'll get these off here, get these cleaned up, make sure they're good, and we'll go ahead and put our 20 MOA base on. So the one thing about the EGW bases are they actually come with the correct bit, so that's handy. You don't have to worry about guessing. And for these Thompson Center Compasses, it is also the same base as the Venture. Sometimes when you look these up, you look up Compass and you can't find nothing. Look up the Thompson Center Venture and make sure it's a short action. That's all you need to know, and that will work on your Compass short action. So when we put this on here, this little recess area goes forward. You want it sloped down. It's actually thicker in the back. And this actually hangs over that back of the action just a little bit, which is no big deal, but that kind of surprised me, given us just a little bit more real estate back here. So we'll get this test fitted. We'll put a little blue Loctite, and we will torque it down with our Wheeler fat wrench, which if you do much scope adjustments, I strongly recommend picking one of these up. They are well worth their money, and you'll find yourself using it all the time. You'll be torquing down your action bolts, bases, scope rings. I've even used this out in the shop working on vehicles. This is very handy, so I highly recommend one of these. So they even anticipate you may drop one of these screws, and they send you 5, so that's pretty convenient. Okay, I got our screws degreased. We're just going to put a dab of blue Loctite. I'm just about out of Loctite. I need to pick up some more. I may be out of Loctite. It sounded like there was a little bit when I shook it up a minute ago. So we got just a drop on each thread of these little screws. I'm going to run these in by hand. Make sure we got our rail kind of centered up and everything goes in okay, and then we'll torque it down with our fat wrench. So we got our wrench torqued to, or set to 20 inch-pounds. We'll work our way inside out. And then we'll hit it one more time just to make sure.
So, hey, I'm glad you guys, you know, it's a bummer about Timothy, but he's always here. Gets the last hat.
Alright, we got our base leveled up, and then I have my little homemade level clamped to the end of the barrel. Both levels are showing level, so we'll go ahead and get our rings and kind of see where we want to put our scope. Alright, so this scope and the base are going to be barely compatible. The eye relief is going to be about right, but if you see that gap right there and where the bell of this front ocular, or whatever you call it is, it does clear. It cannot move any, but I believe it will work. I want to run these low rings and keep the scope as low as possible. So I think it's going to work. We'll get the scope leveled up here and we'll start tightening down our rings. Alright, so I got a little bit of Loctite put on these. What I like to do to the ring is set them on with no caps. I will set my scope in here and make sure that they are square with the scope. That way I don't lap my rings, but this kind of does the same thing. It actually just gets them aligned. So the rings are still loose. I kind of rotate the scope a little bit and then we'll torque it down. I'm just going to start with 20 inch-pounds here. And this makes sure they are square with the scope. So this is 20 inch-pounds, and then we'll crank it up to our torque specs. Alright, so we got our scope rings put on, little Loctite on our bolts. We're going to be using the flashlight through the scope to level our reticle out. I got this other level on the front, so we need to re-level our gun, and then we'll slowly tighten and torque down our rings, and we'll have our scope mounted. Alright, so I've been projecting the reticle on that. I believe I have it trued up. Our both levels are level. We'll flip back on the lights. If you look at this level, the bubble is actually touching the line closest to me. So that turret cap is not exactly true with the reticle, and you got to remember that on scopes. So when you're making a 1,000-yard shot, that can be in 2 or 3 minutes, just that little bit, if you level off the turret and not the reticle. So just keep that in mind. Shorter ranges, if you're going to be shooting 100, 200, 300 yards, you'll probably never notice. Longer ranges, this is critical. So we're going to tighten up our rings really slow and keep this trued up, and we'll have our scope mounted. We're also going to make sure our gaps in our ring are even. So we'll check that out. I'm just going to snug all these down, and then we'll use our final torque with our torque wrench. So we've got everything leveled up, and we're just going to slowly tighten cross to cross and get these without moving the scope. I've got this one, the two center ones, snug, and we're just going to work this back and forth. We're going to keep our ring gaps as even as we can, little bit at a time. It will take a little bit to get these torqued and not move it. You don't want to rush this. Once I get these two tightened, I'm going to double check, and then we'll go ahead and tighten the rest of our screws. Sometimes I'll spend 10 or 15 minutes just tightening up these 12 screws. Okay, I kind of sped through that whole mounting process. You guys get the idea. I have another video back when I mounted my scope on my 22. You can look at the Ruger American 20 MOA Base. Does pretty much the same thing, but we are all mounted up. One thing that I run into, and I'd done this a while back, I completely forgot, when you mount your bubble level to your scope, put it on before you mount it to your rings, because this bottom piece will not fit through there. I run into that, so I had to take the scope back off. I just loosened the rings up, took it off, put it on. I did double check, everything's still level, no issues there. One thing I forgot to mention to you guys, this does have a threaded barrel. I am going to shoot it stock just the way it is right here to start out with. We may look into getting a brake a little bit later. So I do have this 308 brake that we took off the Ruger American. This one was actually all gummed up with carbon, and I sent it to West Desert Shooter, and he ran it through a sonic cleaner, and it really didn't help it much. I ended up taking my Dremel and kind of dremeling all the carbon out of it, and it's kind of rough looking, but I feel like it would probably work. This barrel is a little bit thinner profile than the Ruger American, and this brake, I actually threaded on there. It looks pretty goofy on there. It's pretty big. I know looks don't matter as long as it functions, but I might try to keep my eye out for a little bit slimmer one And if I do put one, it'll be another dirt cheap one. So I'll probably find one off eBay or something like that. But we're going to shoot it without the brake for a little bit, see how it does. If it beats me up too much, we'll throw a brake on it. But I want to shoot this gun as is, stock, the way you guys will probably pick one up and see what we can get out of it. We're going to work up some loads. As soon as I get some brass, we'll get the varget out and these 168 Spear bullets, work up some test loads and see what we can do. We'll take this gun out to 1,000 yards as soon as we get a good shooting load and see what we can do. But I look to have a lot of fun with this rifle. Hope you guys follow along with it. It's about all we got going on. This is second firearm season this weekend, so I'm not shooting this weekend, and next weekend is muzzleloader season. So after we get through these 3 seasons for firearms, we can probably get back out on the range. Mondays I can generally shoot if there's no hunting season, gun season on Mondays, but it's extremely muddy. We got a lot of rain today, so it may be a little bit before we get out. We got the Fort Scott solid copper 243 rounds to shoot. They are loaded up. I'll try to get an intro video up for that very shortly and tell you what's going on with those rounds. So that's going to wrap up tonight's video. We got this gun all ready to go. Looks good. And I guess that's it. We'll see you later.